So the team builder's out, and today we're going to be looking at what I'm calling Najaf's Dream Team. Now, full disclosure, this is just a team builder. PvP is not out. If anyone is telling you they know what they're doing, putting together a deck outside of people on the team who've actually been playing the game, then they're full of shit. I've reached out to a few of the top gamers in Illuvium to hop on my channel and go through some of these decks that I've made up, and they've all pretty much said the same thing. It's too early to really put together an effective deck until we know what that final PvP build looks like and until we actually get to play them. But with all that being said, it's definitely still fun to do some theory crafting. So here's the deck I put together myself. You can see here 28 is the maximum number of units or cards, whatever you want to call them. I have 16 alluvials, 8 augments, 2 weapons, and 2 armors. So to go through them quick, I got a Goliath, a Sinalf, a Fernite, a Malura, a Sepphoris, Greater Grilla, Kidi, a Gnarl, Stabin, Caradulo, Phosphorus, Arcane Lynx, Nimble Terra Lynx, Arcane Flora Lynx, Lesser Earth Groko, Lesser Nature Flish, and then I have basically a Nature weapon and a Earth weapon. And I'll get into the augments a little bit later. So if you look at my synergies, you can see clearly here I'm building around Nature and Earth for my base affinities and Granite and Bloom for my composite affinities. And for synergies, I'm going to be building around Bulwark and Scion for my base classes and Invoker and Vanguard for my composite classes. Now when you're building out these teams, there's a lot of things you need to keep in mind. You want to be able to stack these synergies because you're going to get some boosts. You also want to keep your team somewhat diversified. Like if you just build an all nature team and you came up against a team with a lot of fire alluvials, then you're just going to get demolished. So if you look over here at a visual that Scoriox put out here, you can see that, fire beats nature, nature beats air, air beats water, water beats earth, earth beats fire. Now these lines through the middle means something like earth beats fire, but it also beats nature to a lesser degree. Same with fire, beats nature, beats air to a lesser degree. So you don't want to just pick one of these affinities to build your team around. If you build your team around earth and you come up against a deck that has a lot of water, there's not much you can do about it. So I would recommend you pick 2 of these base affinities to build your team around, but also not have them back to back on this chart. So I also wouldn't go earth and fire, because then again, you come up against water and you're pretty much screwed with the earth and fire. So you'd be looking at something like air and earth, water and fire, or like the deck I put together here, earth and nature. So in this situation, if I come up against a deck with a lot of fire, I focus around my earth and granite alluvials. If I come up against, air or water, I'm going to focus more on my nature alluvials. And you'll see when I go back to my deck, I do have a couple water alluvials in there. In this situation where I may come up against another similar deck with earth and granite in it. So that would be my goal. Depending on what I'm coming up against with my opponent, I can either focus more on the nature side of the build or the earth side of the build. Now, the reason I chose to build around Bulwark and Scion is because I have the strategy of being really tanky in the early rounds with my Bulwark alluvials. And then as I get later in the round, I want to focus more on that Scion and Invoker and really rely on their hyper abilities that increase the strength of the Omega power. So if you can see when you go into a Scion, let's pick one here. Phosphorus. Now this is a composite class of an Arcanite with a Scion dominance. So if you look at the hyper, upon hyper, this unit gains 25% attack speed. Scions also gain 50 Omega power. So with all my Scion alluvials, the hyper is similar. Sometimes it's 25 Omega power. But the idea is when I have a lot of these Scion alluvials on the board and they reach hyper, their Omegas are just going to be OP. And while this build might, leave me vulnerable for those first few rounds, I think the later rounds are really going to go in my favor. Now you can see when these alluvials have a composite synergy, there's going to be a dominance in there. For example, Bloom here, which is made up of granite and nature, has a dominance of nature. And over here for Arcanite has a dominance of Scion. That's going to come into play when you're bonding to your Ranger. So this is where weapons become a big deal when you're putting together your team. If we're looking here for Bloom, I have 2 Bloom alluvials, so I can get those 2 stacks. If I want that 3rd stack of Bloom, I need to pick a weapon that has either nature or earth to put on my ranger, and then I need to pick an alluvial that has a dominant base affinity of the opposite one to fuse to my ranger. So for example, if I pick this nature weapon and I want to get another bloom synergy stack from my ranger, I would need to fuse an earth alluvial or an alluvial with an earth dominance to that ranger. So the earth from the alluvial plus the nature from the weapon will combine and make another bloom, which in my synergies would give me that third stack. So I would be jumping up from that 150 max health, 15 omega power, 20 health regen, to a 225 max health, 22 omega power, and 25 health regen. So when I'm finally able to play this build, I think I'm going to be tweaking it a little bit more. I might add in a couple more weapons, but right now I know I'm going to need an earth weapon and a nature weapon ready to go if I want to get that extra stack of bloom. And the same sort of thing happens when you're looking at the classes. And then I'm not going to get too much into the augments right now because those are something that I'm really not too sure how they're going to play out until I start playing PvP on November 28th. But as you can imagine, if I'm building my team out to be tanky early on and then really using that omega power in later rounds, the augments I've chosen are around those two aspects so that I can put something on earlier to make me more tanky, and I can use something later that's going to make my omega power even more powerful or come up more frequently. So again, this is an early build here. I haven't played yet. I'm not on the team, and I'm probably going to tweak this a little bit between now and when PvP actually comes out. But this is a deck that I'm really excited to try out. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about it in the comments below. Do you think this is a good build? Do you think it's a good strategy? What would you change? And if you've built out any decks yourself, I want to hear what your builds are looking like. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.